Hey guys, Thrasher here. I am a former game dev and a blockchain engineer. I worked on a very large NFT collection worth almost $1 billion at one point, and I've had multiple people ask me to look at this video specifically and talk about Pirate Software and what he thinks about cryptocurrency in games. Let's jump into it right now.
On crypto, like not the assholes that abuse it or whatever, like crypto as a whole, what do you think about it? Because I use it every once in a while for different things, but like not exclusive. I don't mine it. I don't do anything like, I don't dig in deep in crypto bro shit. I just use it for this and that.
For making money.
What do you think?
So back when it was young, when it was new, I actually mined some Bitcoin way back in the day. I had some ASIC miners that were little USB miners because I was like, what?
Okay, so he said when it was new, when it was young. Definitely not when it was new. I would accept young. So if he had a little USB ASIC miner, that means that he was mining this. Basically, the earliest he could have mined it was 2014, but probably more like 2015. Way back in the day when this first started, there was only CPU mining. People didn't really understand the most efficient way to mine this. That was 2009. Early 2010, maybe more like middle of the year, there were GPU miners when people realized, oh, GPUs are considerably more effective at this. I remember mining with like my 570, I think. It was quite a while ago. And then after the GPU in 2013, well, I guess there was one more step in between there, but 2013 is when ASIC miners came out. But they were not initially little tiny USB miners. They were big, they were like this big. And after maybe 8 months or so, 6 months, something like that, they started coming up with USB miners. So that was like 2014-ish. So technically, that would be second cycle. So every halving, which happens every 4 years, is what we call a cycle. So he would be in the second cycle. So it was still fairly new, fairly young, but it was definitely not new. At this point, there had already been a full news cycle. There was a huge news cycle in 2013 when the price ran, sky high. I unfortunately sold a lot of my Bitcoin in 2013 when the price ran up. Is what it is.
Well, this is kind of an interesting little community of people who are pushing processing power to its limit. It's kind of a hardware culture. It wasn't a cryptocurrency. It was more like an oddity, right? It was kind of interesting.
Yeah, so it wasn't a hardware culture. There was a secondary hardware culture, which is what he's talking about, which is the ASIC miners. It was always about decentralization, and it was a digital culture. It was a programming culture. The reason that I got into it is because back when I was game programming, obviously a lot of programming was done back in 2010, still in C++. A lot of it was moving to C#, but still a fair amount in C++. And in the C++ programming communities on the forums, there were people that started talking about Bitcoin in late 2009, early 2010, and that's kind of when I got into it. So the digital culture, decentralization culture started first. The hardware culture that he's talking about is something that really didn't start showing up until the second cycle.
Cool. And now it has turned into something that's just disgusting, honestly. It's turned into something where people scam each other all the time. It's turned into like weird, horrible raids of bullshit on the internet. And it's also turned into like weird shit in video games, where for a little while there, everyone was like,
okay, hold on. So he is talking about the actual execution or some of the executions. This is a very powerful tool, right? Blockchain is a crazy powerful tool. Most people will tell you that it has no use, but those in the know understand that there are extreme use cases for trustlessness, decentralization, the idea that you have an immutable ledger. All of that is super important. And the thing about tools is they can be used for good or evil. So I've never really put any credence behind the idea of, oh, people are using this thing to do bad things, so this thing is bad. There are lots of tools that are used for bad things. That doesn't make the tool itself bad. For example, the internet, right? The internet is used for all kinds of crimes every single day. That doesn't make the internet itself inherently bad. In fact, the internet is probably the most important tool that we have created, at least in the last few hundred years, but possibly in the entire history of mankind. Hopefully it will lead to all of the AI revolutions that everyone is talking about, and we can cure all diseases and people can live forever. Whether or not you want that last part, whatever, it's a massive tool that's being used for good and for evil. So don't blame the tool just because it can be used for evil because it's powerful.
Like, I'm adding crypto to my game. And I was like, what does that mean? And they're like, I'm going to do blockchain for all the items. Well, something that's really interesting about blockchain is that it's a ledger. It's an immutable ledger, which means you cannot edit that shit. So imagine...
No. That is not true. So that's a huge misnomer. Everyone says it's an immutable ledger. The ledger itself is immutable. That doesn't mean the state of the ledger is immutable. So for example, you have some variable that's on your ledger, a transaction happens. That transaction can never be changed. It's decentralized, it's trustless. Everyone in the world for the rest of time can see that that transaction happened and exactly how it happened. But let's say that someone moves an item or someone makes a mistake and sends an item to a person they don't mean to. You absolutely can change the state of the ledger itself by creating another transaction that sends it wherever you need to send it, that adjusts the item in whatever way you need to adjust it. Now, that doesn't mean that some of the devs that first get on blockchain and start using it for NFTs and game development are going to do that correctly and give themselves the proper tools, but that does have that ability. Just because it's immutable doesn't mean the state of the ledger is immutable. All right, let's keep going.
You're playing World of Warcraft and you get all your gold stolen from your account. In a traditional database, the GMs can go back in and reverse that and give you all your items and gold back. In a ledger system like blockchain, your shit's gone permanently.
That's permanent.
And no one can do anything for you, and it's just eat it, kid. Like,
that's not how it works. Like I said, it's a misnomer. So let's say that gold goes to someone else's account. You can track exactly where that gold went because it's on a ledger. Everyone can see where it went. If the devs are smart enough to add a minting system and a burning system, if they really wanted to, they could burn all that gold and then they could remint the gold back to the player. There's 50 other ways that they could solve this problem. You could come up with decentralized self-policing systems, whatever, but there are ways to fix that problem without going to the deep end and saying, oh, well, see, it got moved, so there's no way to fix it for the rest of time. That gold is going to be sitting there. That's not true. The only thing that's there for the rest of time is the record, the transaction that it happened. All right.
So it's super weird to watch all of these companies want to reinvent the wheel as a triangle and then be like, it's better somehow. And like, I hate that direction. It's disgusting and dumb. And like, it has no place in games, man. It just...
I completely disagree. I don't know that NFTs will ever fully get integrated into games, but it seems pretty inevitable at this point. I would say the probability is higher than 99%. Again, the problem that I see here is he goes back to this idea of, oh, well, I mined Bitcoin back in the day. Bitcoin is not the same as, say, an EVM, for example, if you're on Ethereum using NFTs. I doubt that he has any real experience with using NFTs, other than obviously he's probably messed around with a few games where large game companies were trying to make NFTs work and they didn't. So that's a bigger problem, is that they conflate Bitcoin, or what are known as fungible tokens, with non-fungible tokens, NFTs, which in themselves are not even the items. They're actually a receipt for the item. Think of it as like a title for a house, or a deed for a house, title for a car, something like that. So yeah, there's some deeper issues here.
Here's a question. Are there any places in game for it? Like any?
I don't think so.
Let's take, like, no, not at all, you think?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I think the only time that you ever see this currently in games, ever, is when people are trying to do like land ownership in games, and that's just a scam. When you're trying to see it for like ownership over items, they're like, you truly own it because it's on the blockchain, but in reality it's just a shittily maintained database where they can't reverse anything on it. Like, none of this is good.
Again,
just use a traditional database. They're like, oh, you truly own your items, and you can have a connection between, you know, Minecraft and Diablo 4. And it's like, no, dude, we can do that with a normal database. We call them license keys. We've been doing this shit for decades. Like, you don't...
Okay, license keys are a solution that we've used for a long time. License keys are very piratable. There is no decentralization or trustlessness. So the idea is, in order for a license key to work, you have to trust that whoever's telling you about the license key is telling you the truth. Yes, there's systems that are algorithms, I guess, that are built to figure out whether or not a license key is legit. But the problem is that it's very easy to get around those systems. If you have a ledger that exists everywhere in the world, people can see whether or not someone should own that item based on the receipt, which is the exact same general idea as any type of a license key. The problem therein lies with the fact that he doesn't understand what NFTs actually are. Or if he does, even at a basic level, there are some problems with his understanding of the nuances of how they work and what they actually do. They actually solve many of the problems that we currently have with license keys, the biggest one being piracy.
need blockchain to pull this off. In fact, it's harder to do that way and worse to maintain. There's no reason for that whatsoever.
I will give him that it is harder to do, and probably harder to maintain. Currently, it's definitely harder to maintain because there's just not as many tools, right? Databases have existed much longer than blockchain technology, so there are many tools that we sit on top of when we're working with databases. That doesn't mean that that will always be the case, but I do agree that it currently is harder to maintain, and it is a little bit of a pain in the ass, but I think that the pros outweigh the cons by a pretty wide margin.
And I hate it. It makes no sense. You know what a ledger is really good for? When you want to have a distributed network of something being recorded that no one can delete or edit or modify.
Oh, you mean like a PvP event or esports where people might be cheating and we want exact copies of what happened? Was I close enough to the mic when I said that? There are so many use cases for blockchain technology inside of games that it's crazy. Like, we're just barely scratching the surface. And I feel like what's happening here is he has a knee-jerk reaction to all of the criminality and all of the scamming and all of that that's going on. And he's not really considering how the technology can actually be applied. He's a very intelligent person. I've seen quite a few of his streams and his clips. It's just unfortunate when you see someone who has the ability to think extremely critically, but has a knee-jerk reaction so they don't actually dig deeper into any use case for whatever it is, technology, something that's happening in society. Not to get political. Let's keep going.
I was kind of
really
hoping you were going to
for?
scream nothing.
No,
Not
it's
gonna
good
lie.
for some things. You know, you know what it's actually really good for? Imagine Port Authority recording all of the incoming Port Authority actions, all the things that have gone in at a port. And you don't want that to ever be deleted, and it's distributed. Now everybody has a record of it, and no one can edit that or modify it. That is a fantastic use for something
100%.
like blockchain. For a games database, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life, because you need to be able to edit and maintain that. It makes no sense to do that shit.
So on the whole, I think he has a bit of a Dunning-Kruger problem, and I don't mean that in a slur form. I'm not trying to denigrate him specifically. I'm just saying that his experience with cryptocurrency is just enough that he thinks he has enough knowledge to actually speak about this intellectually, and unfortunately he doesn't. So he needs to dig a lot deeper into NFTs. I disagree with about 60% of what he's saying. What he said about the Port Authority is correct. He obviously has some understanding of how blockchain technology should work. He understands why it's important for things to be trustless and decentralized. So there is some positive there, but I disagree with almost everything he said on the gaming side, just because he doesn't have a strong understanding of of any form of EVM technology or Solana. Obviously, Solana doesn't work the same way that Ethereum and all of its layer 2s work, but same general idea. I have my own problems with Solana, but overall, yeah, I mean, that's kind of my take on it. And let me know what you guys think. Do NFTs have a place in gaming? Can you see any reason for that technology to actually be helpful? Do you think that they're just going to be evil no matter what? Are the big corporations going to find some way to extract more money out of us with them? We're already kind of seeing that. Let me know what you guys think down below. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.